It's so intense and dramatic. I feel like I should have a bigger, I don't know, I should have something more to say. I don't have anything exciting to say. I got to write something down. Welcome, everybody. Hold on. My notifications are going haywire. Let me turn all this stuff off. All right. Hey, here we go. Welcome back. Okay. Welcome, everybody. I'm getting my ducks in a row. Bear with me 1 second. Welcome to Night Shift Live. It's Wednesday, August 28th. It's 2:03. But it's nighttime somewhere. Let's see who's in the chat. Brett is here. Hey, Brett. Good to see you, my friend. Apocalypse Promotions, Johnny J, Uncle Delmar, Sage Wildheart. Such a cool name. Christopher. Welcome, welcome. Alan, Anthony, Prickly G, of course, Sage Sleuth, Bilbo, everyone, welcome. It's great to have you here. Just a little housekeeping stuff before we get started. Someone was asking about how to become a member. If you are interested in supporting the channel and becoming a member, you can do it on the YouTube page. If you just go to YouTube and search the channel Night Shift, and then you go to our main page, it should have a little join button right there. You can also watch any video on the channel, and that should do it. Hold on, I have you know what? I should find this out myself. We should do it. Let's just go there now. Let's see. If I watch this, yeah, any video you watch on the channel, right underneath it, there's a little thing that says join. You can click that. You can become a member. It helps out the channel. It helps me out, and just helps us keep doing these. And we're working on some ways to keep diversifying the members-only content as we go. So if you want to become a member, that would be amazing. You're the heart of Team Night Shift. Please go there. You can do that. You can also support the channel by visiting our website. And let me see if I can make this happen. My tabs in OBS are ridiculous. It's like Havana Syndrome, abductions, alien implants. It's like all these different tabs. Here we go. Let's do this. I teed it up and it wasn't even ready. Okay, you can go to our website, teamnightshift.com. Team Night Shift is, I promise you, going to be at some point in the near future, the hub of all the activity going on for the Night Shift channel and what we're doing here. But you can go to teamnightshift.com, and I have some merch news for you guys. I think we've solved UK shipping. I believe that's solved. I tried doing it. I put in an order. It went through. Here we go. Click on merch. You can go here. Free shipping on all shirts. So far as I know, if you run into an order and you put an order in and it says there's not free shipping on a shirt, let me know. We'll fix it for you. But free shipping on shirts. UK shipping is open. I think I need some people in the UK to just put in an order and see if it lets you like get to the shipping page. It should. And oh yeah, we've got hats now. This has been something people have been asking for a while. So we've got the Night Shift cap, trucker cap. And this is the text logo. It's the only one that has this logo on it right now. So got it in some different colors, black and white, of course, navy, gray, black on black. Super, super slick. So you can support us there. You can also reach out and send an email to me directly if you've got an idea for a show or you want to just get in contact. You can go to make contact. You can drop me a little note, and it'll go straight to me, and then we can talk. This is a great way for me to come into contact with people to interview on the show. I've actually got a number of interviews lined up through this method, so it's been really, really helpful. If I don't respond right away, just give me a day or two, I promise. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And if you want to join Team Night Shift, which is basically just a loose collection of UFO nerds, you can go up here and click this button, Join Team Night Shift. It'll take you to this field, and you can fill out everything here. You just put in your name, email, and click that. And then when our mailing list does launch officially, you'll get some emails. They won't be frequent, I promise. You might get one every 2 weeks, maybe. Definitely one a year, for sure. So that brings me to my next announcement. We're making some adjustments to the show and changing up a few things. We've got some extra help now, and a few people have come on board to help us take this thing to the next level. So I'm excited about that. Brett is in charge of our Discord, which is in the early stages. It's not fully open yet, but I was there. We were just working on it. Brett and Chris and myself and Xander dropped by for a little bit yesterday, and it's looking really good. It's looking really good. I am still wrapping my mind around how Discord works. Brett assures me that he can clear up any confusion that I may have. So thank you, Brett. Thank you for all the setup that you've put into this. This is it's going to be good when we get it launched. It'll be just a way that we can hang out in a little bit more of a relaxed way and just expand sort of the scope of what we can do with the channel. So I'm excited to see what we can do with it and where we can take it. But when that does launch, we're going to roll it out. So right now it's closed for the internal team to just work at it and figure out what we're going to do. When it does open, it'll open in a limited way for invitation only. So we'll reach out to certain people. We'll bring you on board, and then you can come in and help us test everything out. And then as we perfect it and make sure that everything's working properly, we'll gradually open it up to everybody. And then that's the plan. What else? We're going to be changing up the format a little bit, I think. I believe I'm going to start this probably next week or the week after. I might go next week, and we're going to go down to 2 live streams a week, which will probably be Monday and either Wednesday or Friday, but probably Mondays and Fridays. I need that middle part of the week to do channel management, to work on getting guests, to record interviews, to edit longer form videos, and just to produce some of the other content. So I think what I'm going to do is just condense, instead of doing, right now we do members only Monday, which is just a members only thing. Then Wednesday and Friday are open live streams. I'm probably going to collapse those down into just Friday, and then just work extra hard to make Friday really, really nice and make that pop. So that's the plan. And that we'll either do that next week or the week following. But this has been we've had a good run doing 2 a week. KT, you haven't gotten any emails because I haven't sent any out yet. So I've got that all set up, and I had every intention of sending out like a welcome email to everyone. And then one thing led to another, and I haven't had a chance to just sit down and write it. So I've got to put all that together. But everybody's on the list. I've checked. You're all there. And this is going to launch soon. This is why I need that extra day during the week. I literally need a full day just to go in and make all these little changes happen. Chris Hovard, I'm building the list of people as we speak for possible invites to Discord. So do right by Chris. All right. So if you're dealing with Chris, stay on his good side. He's making the list. Samantha C. Hi from Melbourne, Florida. Finally made it on a live. Love your vids and your vibe. Thanks. You're one of my favorite UFO shows on YouTube. Well, that's very kind of you. Thank you very much. It's good to have you here. I need to clone myself like that, like the seminal Michael Keaton film. Was it Multiplicity? Is that the one where he made like 3 copies of himself, and each time he made a copy, it was like dumber than the one that was before. He was making a copy of a copy. Thoroughly enjoy your Wednesday live sessions. It's my only day off. Well, we might. I never say never. We'll see how it goes. A part of this, and I talk about it all this. I feel like I just never shut up about this, so I'll keep it short. Part of the problem is that the planning steps involved in making better quality content eat up a lot of time in and of themselves. Like just to do an interview takes a lot of planning, takes a lot of time. So in order to, you almost have to commit to just doing live stuff that takes no time to really edit, so you can just do your prep and then go live, or you have to commit, especially for someone like me who's doing a lot of this stuff, just doing all the production on my own. I have to commit to the longer form stuff, and I just have to devote more time to it. But that means fewer. I might only put out one video a week. And I found that the community is so vibrant. We have such a good community here. It's so cool to get together with everyone and just have this time. I don't want to give that up. So I'm trying to split the difference and find a happy medium in between. And I think this is going to be it. But Xander Jones, who wrote the awesome theme music for the show that we've been using for the last few live streams, has graciously offered to come on board and help produce some of the content and help me get organized a little bit. So we're in a conversation right now to figure out how best to do that and how to make that transition happen. But yeah, I think we're gonna have that ironed out in a week or two, and you'll see that some of that change come up. It'll show up in increased efficiency across the board, I hope. It's tough to grow. There's like this uncanny valley, this weird like dip in between of it's taking off, and it's a lot more work to do, but it's also doing that amount of work. You're spinning your wheels constantly trying to keep the machine running. That it's hard to get to that next level. So it's a challenge, but it's a good problem to have. Discord will be dope. Sage Wildheart, way easier to interact with others. I agree. I also like pizza. Clay Weber, thanks for the glimmer of hope there, Clint. I totally understand, but just off the cuff ranting is worth my time on my day. Oh God, wow. Well, if that's, thank you. That means a lot. Quality over quantity. When does the prog start? I'm not sure I understand. Prog. There are plenty of quick shows. Content counts. AG. Shout out to Xander. Welcome. Yeah, Xander's responsible for that badass sound. He's like found the sound for Night Shift. It's really cool. I was like, he asked me, he's like, well, send me some ideas, like some samples of things that you like, and just give me an idea of where your head's at. I was like, okay, well, I kind of had a few things set aside, and I made like I don't know, just like 5 or 6 things on it, just little clips, and I sent him over, and he's like, all right, I got this, and then. And I get this email, and he's like, yeah, I've got a folder. Look inside this folder. There's all these tracks. I wrote the theme song. This one's rad as fuck. You can just click that one. It was labeled rad as fuck. I clicked it. That's the song you hear in the beginning. And it is. Hillbilly Herb, new watcher. I love the show. Stupid question, though. Are there ever late night streams or usually daytime? Ironically, it's all daytime stuff. I just thought Night Shift sounded cool. Night Shift is more of a name. There's a story behind that name, but we can go there in a minute. So most of the live streams are during the day. I do want to eventually do a late night stream. I think it would be really cool to do something that's on a regular time every week. I don't know about you guys, but everything being on demand all the time, it's nice, but there's something also very cool about a show that's on once a week, and if you're there, you get it, and if you're not there, you don't watch it, and that's it, and then it's gone. I almost feel like as content becomes easier to create and it lives longer and longer, like think about it like this. Streaming world, right? Like you watch Netflix, Amazon Prime, Apple One, Showtime, HBO, however many streaming services you have, Paramount Plus for Star Trek people. But nothing, and there's so much content. It's impossible to consume the amount of content there is. But then none of it has any longevity. Like a year later, it's all gone and it's just vapor. It's not like back in the day when you would like a movie, you would just buy the DVD of Return of the Jedi or whatever. You would have it, and it's just there. And movies would stick around for years and years. And now it's like I have to go find it, and which streaming service is it on, and can I even find it anymore? And it was really like that with TV. I used to watch X-Files, but my favorite thing was like on a Thursday night when X-Files would air. I think it was Thursday nights, like 9:30, 8. No, it was 8 to 9. And then on Friday, you knew what you were talking about. You would go into school and you would just talk to everybody. Okay, not everybody. I would talk to the one other person who watched X-Files besides me. But we had a great conversation, and it was cool. I look forward to it. So I think there's a value in that. KT's a night owl, so it works for me. I don't usually go. You know that there used to be. Well, I think she's still around. Delilah. There's this radio host, Delilah. Yeah, Delilah. Delilah.com. There you go. Uh, my friend's mom used to have Delilah on in on their kitchen radio all the time, and I used to like go over and I'd be over at their house, and it would just be like Delilah in the background, and she was doing this. Well, it's the same show basically. It's like romance advice, and then playing like adult contemporary, relaxed soft rock. Uh, like I don't know, like that's just what it was. And it was just this like audio wallpaper that was always on in the background. I found it really interesting. So I wanted to make a Delilah for UFO nerds, and that's what this is supposed to be. Spoiler alert. There you go. Steve Music. Hey, greetings from down under, Clint and everybody. It's 4 a.m. in the morning here in Melbourne. That's okay. I just woke up and I don't have to work today, so it's great to be here. It's great to have you at 4 a.m. Wow, you're up early, man. I used to be able to get up at 4, but I can't anymore. I don't have it. Romania, Panda Universal. It's exactly late night. See, that's our target demo in Romania. Greetings, Steve. X-Files was the best. Remember that episode about the crazy inbreds that was only aired once? I do remember that episode. I know exactly what episode you're talking about. X-Files should have been rebooted by now, or I want to know what's going on with X-Files. Like, who owns the rights to X-Files? Why is that show not being redone? Now is the time for it. There's never been a better time. Even when the original X-Files aired at that time, this time is now even better for that show. It makes more sense now than ever before. And I don't know if anyone's looked at that, but it feels like that should be coming out on like HBO or Netflix. I don't think you can ever really recreate the chemistry of the original cast, but I'd be willing to let them give it a shot and try. After I saw Star Trek Strange New Worlds, I was like, okay, they still can find the magic. It's possible. All right. Brett Higgins, I think the Dark Skies series would be better. An amalgamation of X-Files would be better. All right, so today I want to talk a little bit about Richard Dolan. Brett sent me this link, and I had a different thing I wanted to talk about, but I was able to make this work because the interview was, or not interview, but the episode was so good. Richard Dolan just put out his analysis of Imminent, and I was watching it. It's really good. It's really good, and he touches on a lot of very key points that I think are extremely important. And when you have limited time, and you have a job, and you have a family, and you have a life, and you have a limited amount of bandwidth in the day to consume content. If you're going to look at UFO content, first of all, be here, watch our show. But if you're going to look at anything else, look at Richard Dolan's channel. Richard Dolan is where that's the best return on investment for your time in the UFO space that you're going to find. In bar none, point blank. He's just that good. He's a historian by training. He has a very deft way of describing the situation in context with the geopolitical picture at any given point in history. So he started out researching the UFO phenomena as a historical project. He wanted to research the history of what people claimed was this cover-up. And in doing so, he didn't actually start out as a believer, but in doing so, in that work, he became a believer because he saw so much proof and just so much evidence, I guess I should say. So he's been lecturing and talking, writing books about ufology since the mid '90s, and doing it all the time. He's one of the biggest voices in the space, and I would love to have him on this channel if I can ever get him. I reached out to him a while back, and I don't think we were where we needed to be yet. And his representative responded very politely and said, "Check back with us," more or less, but in the nicest possible way. So check back with us when you grow the channel a little bit. Uh, and so I have to follow up and do that. I want to get Richard on here, but he did an analysis of Imminent, and there were just a few clips from that I thought were spot on. Interestingly, a lot of the things that he talks about in this video are things that we've talked about on this channel for some time now. And some of the things that recently became sort of official, I guess you could say, when they came out in Lou's book, are things that we've been talking about for a long time. He mentions abductions. He brings that into the conversation. That's new. That's new since 2017. There's there's the period of time before 2017 where abductions were like a real part of the conversation. Everything that happened after 2017, it's like they were afraid to have that conversation. I didn't see very many people talk about it at all. Partly, it was partly one of the reasons I started covering it here, because it was just so unheard of to really hear anybody go there, particularly in Congress or around any of that stuff. So the fact that Lou acknowledges that in his book was interesting. And the threat narrative. Richard responds to the threat narrative, the concept he talks a little bit about, and I thought that was uh, worth your time. So I want to show you a few clips from that interview, and we'll talk about those. Anthony, Richard Dolan's voice is also soothing to listen to. Richard Dolan is also just a smart. He's sharp, and he's looked at this. I think he said in past interviews his dad was a cop, and he strikes me as that kind of a guy. Like he's Richard Dolan strikes me as the grizzled detective who's seen it all, who's seen everything, and he's like kind of jaded to it a little bit, but he's seen enough to know that it's real, and he's just kind of like everybody's got a story, but that's not really where the action is. It's going to be in the data and in the history and in the way that these things overlap and how they work together. So he just breaks out a lot of that from Lou's book that in a way that's very comprehensive. I think it's worth looking at. Outer Range. Just check the chat here real quick. For a lot of us, we've known, but I can appreciate Lou bringing this to light for people unfamiliar with the topic. Dolan's memory is also acute. Dolan, yeah. We're gonna get to, okay. We're gonna go to Dolan in just a second, but one more thing on that point. Dolan hasn't ever really been afraid to talk about the threat potential of NHI, and I've listened to many interviews with him, and he's got a couple of. I have a couple of his books here, and he talks about the threat potential. And he makes a really excellent point in this video about the threat narrative and the concept of like using that term narrative, which we'll save for a minute. But he also acknowledges that it's weird how much pushback there is in the community that some people would consider NHI a threat, and he points that out. He's like, and that's something that I've always found really strange. Like people get really defensive about that, and he takes that on in a really interesting way. Let me see if I can find this. Bear with me one second. I have to go here. And we're going to do. Okay. All right. So this first clip is OSAP versus ATIP, and he's just made a really great slide for this, and he talks about sort of the uh, overlap between those two programs and how one metamorphosized into the other, and basically the relationship between these contractors and these programs. And then he starts to get into the threat narrative. So I'm just going to play this for a couple of maybe 2-3 minutes here. Let me see if I can get this to go, and then we'll talk about it. So let's go here. And if you're not already a subscriber to Richard's channel, please go there and subscribe. Uh, Richard is awesome. As you'll see, his analysis is like dead on every time. I like when I when I hear Richard Dolan say it, I'm just like, okay, I'll take that to the bank.
But the idea of moving away from OSAP to something like ATIP was essentially a more focused mandate, specifically on UAP. And within the Pentagon, and this is an important point here, if you're going to get the Pentagon to support this type of study, you're going to be a lot better off if you are focusing on any potential threats of these objects, particularly within the context of the global war on terror, but really in any context within the Pentagon. You've got a very competitive bureaucracy. Everyone wants the money that's in there. They're all fighting over it. And if you do not have a clear, tangible program with very specific objectives and outcomes that you're trying to get out of this, then you're going to be in real trouble. So the idea was, let's focus also on these UAP. And, in fairness, it was not difficult to see these as potential national security risks. As I will discuss, and as Lou gets into in his book, they were looking at many, many cases where these objects were interacting with U.S. military personnel, Navy fleets in particular. Talks about the Tic Tac encounter, the Nimitz battle group, and then also later with the USS Roosevelt, demonstrating that these objects were absolutely well beyond capabilities that the United States had any noticeable or any potential ability to match in these things. So the idea was to emphasize the need to bring the program under a kind of national security umbrella to defend its existence within the Pentagon. And that was really a big part of what ATIP was about, the way he puts it. Again, you have people within the UFO, UAP community today who have issues with this so-called threat narrative. Again, I'm going to discuss that before we're done. But despite this, the mission of ATIP was to ensure that the phenomenon was taken seriously by the military and by the government. I think that's fair enough to say. And, the thing about Lou's position on this, it always strikes me as odd when people complain that a military guy is stressing a potential threat. This is what we pay them for. Like, you pay the military to defend your national security. That is the exact point of the military. And so it just always struck me as a little odd to complain that you got a guy coming out of that whole community who talks about a potential threat, and then people want to complain that he's doing that. That's literally his job.
Some great points there, and that's what's so nice about Dolan's analysis. He cuts right to the bone, and he doesn't mince words. I think it's interesting how divided the community is on this whole threat concept, because to me, it's very simple, right? If you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And if you're a hammer with a $800 billion a year budget, then you better find some nails. And if you can't find them, then, that's just not on your radar. You're looking elsewhere. So for a program to exist like OSAP and ATIP within the defense community makes sense to me. It makes sense that our most sophisticated intelligence gathering tools and technical know-how is contained within our defense infrastructure. and our intelligence infrastructure. So that is the most precise set of tools we have for tracking, understanding, managing, mitigating whatever NHI turn out to be, whatever that is. But I think it's interesting that we don't have another tool. Like there's no other organization with that kind of technical wizardry, that kind of prowess, with that kind of deep bench of expertise and researchers that it can call upon. That has that level of funding that can be targeted specifically at dealing with something like this. I would equate it to something um, like in Star Trek. Starfleet is not a military organization. Starfleet is a scientific organization. This is one of the other reasons Star Trek is so great. When you look at Star Trek, when you go like look at the bridge of the Enterprise, it's not a military warship. That's a scientific exploration vessel that's got defensive abilities built into it. But everyone on there is like PhD level, multiple PhDs, speak multiple languages, trained to the absolute. These are peak humans at their absolute best, especially in the TNG universe. And when they encounter something new and unknown, they approach it with curiosity and a sense of responsibility to and respect for other life forms. Star Trek was the only science fiction universe that articulated a way of thinking that came anywhere close to that. I can't think of anything else that's even close, right? Like that's it. In fact, Gene Roddenberry was so serious about this. If you watch the trailer for the Star Trek the Motion Picture in I think it's 1979, if you go back and watch trailers from or watch just all of the original films, you'll see diversity in those casts that was unheard of for the time. Like in people in leadership positions that were people of color that were cast in the show back in the 60s. The first interracial kiss was on Star Trek. The first one ever on television was on Star Trek. So to Richard's point about Lou and basically trying to study this phenomenon under the umbrella of the defense establishment, that makes a lot of sense. And you have to jockey for funding against other programs that are competing for those dollars. So you have to position your work as dealing with a threat. That makes sense. But he's also very correct that these machines or these objects or these encounters that we're having with these beings, we have no ability to. We're always at a disadvantage. We'll always be at a disadvantage, and that's a real problem. Even if they aren't a threat in the traditional sense, like they're not going to launch an Independence Day style invasion or a War of the Worlds kind of invasion. Like forget about all that for a second. Do you ever really want to be subordinate to something or someone else in a power dynamic that you can never ever escape or get out of? Like imagine just that, like living in that world. That's hard to imagine for us today because we have so much we've dominated this planet for so long. We have no concept of what it would be like to know, like to and literally be surrounded by these things at all times. Like if you go by the accounts that we've already heard, we're talking about thousands and thousands, tens of thousands, probably people spread out all over the world who every single day are seeing UAP constantly, from our military pilots to our people on Navy ships deployed at sea, sensor technicians, astronomers, civilians, you name it. So that, you know, whether it's all one group or many groups or it's all spread out, either way, it's like we're completely surrounded. So if we just don't if we don't think of that as a threat, that's kind of crazy. Why wouldn't you? So anyway, I just found that interesting, and I think Richard's right for mentioning it there. Um, oh yeah, and in my notes, in our own history, just coming into contact with another species or another civilization would be catastrophic, and we've seen this. You know, look at the European colonization of North and South America and what that did to the native people there. obliterated, and their culture just destroyed, atomized. And you think about, oh yeah, in Star Trek: The Motion Picture, in the trailer for that, there's a Native American serving in Starfleet in 1979 on one of the the space station that they start out the movie in, um, and it's one of the few times you see that, like, a person represented in that way in this like elite human society. It's very cool. But what happens when our culture comes into contact with another culture that's older and has a better handle on all of these different technologies? Even if there's no direct conflict or no direct contact, it's going to throw our entire culture into a tailspin. How we come out of that, how we handle ourselves, uh, how we withstand that is going to be a real interesting thing to watch. I think that uh, to a large extent, that is going to depend on how normalized this conversation becomes over the next decade. It's the same thing with AI, by the way. When you're in a game, um, and a new player enters the game, and they're just so vastly superior. For every 7 days that you have to think about something, they have the equivalent of 30,000 years to sit there and plan and read every book ever and understand everything there is to know about you and your entire family and all of your psychological makeup based on your internet history. They know what time of day you're hungry. They know what your blood sugar is. This AI would be so powerful, whether it's an AI or an NHI. It's this element in the game that is now so fucking far beyond. Um, that's going to mess with people. Like, knowing that that's there, it's just there. And with AI, we're handing it the keys. We're handing it the keys to our civilization. Slowly over time, we're just going to automate things away to the. There will come a day where so much of our day to day world is automated that we won't know how to take it back. We wouldn't really even have the knowledge or understanding anymore to like undo that. That's a definitely going to happen at some point. So yeah, the NHI thing is not that far off from AI. And I don't know. I think that's I don't know anybody else who's really talking about that. Let's check the chat and see what's going on. Mm, mm, mm. Sage Sleuth gifted 5 night shift memberships. Sage Sleuth, thank you so much. That is amazing. You are awesome. You are a true hero. Shout out to Sage Sleuth. You are a megastar. That is true. You are a megastar, Sage Sleuth. There, it's official. What, especially if we officially learn our DNA was modified at some point. Uh, Alien Invasion would be more like the TV show V. Yeah, it could be. Actually, for those who aren't familiar with V, it holds up, kind of. Um, no, it doesn't hold up, but you should still watch it. It's great. But the visitors V, the visitors show up and they offer to help humanity by trading technology with us, and then in the process of doing that, they infiltrate our society and take over. And except for this small band of ragtag, rough and tumble freedom fighters, um, it's 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 a little corny by today's standards, but it's a great show. It is worth watching. Um, Richard Dolan made a great point about the threat thing. Like, what if the threat is simply this? What if it's like they don't want to come in here and destroy everything? What if that's not it? What if it's like they look at our planet and they go, that is a very biologically diverse gem of a world with beautiful forests and amazing nature and these fantastic liquid water oceans, and what a beautiful planet. These humans are doing an awful job of taking care of it. What if we just take them out of the equation with some kind of a virus or some kind of a nanotech device that can just turn them all into gray goo? Or what if we, you know, It doesn't have to be Independence Day to be a threat. What if they just show up and they're like, you work for us now? And that's the deal. And if you don't like it, well, we turned off all your nuclear weapons. So good luck. Uh, then it's over. Right. So in Imminent, Lou talks about preparation of the battlefield and how what has been observed uh, could be interpreted as preparation of the battlefield. And I'm inclined to agree. I don't see why it wouldn't be. Like, your safest bet is to assume that. That's the safest bet. And we know that somehow there must be some technology that can bring these things down because we shoot them down. The CIA has a whole group of guys that do this. So apparently, right? Office of Global Access is going around retrieving these things. Clearly, EMPs can take these things down because Lou talks about it in the book, and they've talked about setting up traps for UAPs where they basically take these nuclear reactors, create a big nuclear footprint, wait for a bunch of UAPs to show up, and then maybe just drop an EMP on top of them and see what happens. I don't know, but let's just say that there is a vulnerability. We should know what that is. That's a good thing to know. I think. We're a gas station stop off point. Chris Hovord. Shadow Patriot Terry, welcome. Good to have you here. Maybe we were slaves already. So I grew up the 80s version and like the newer one. Morena Baccarin. I was just watching a thing on Firefly, actually. That's funny. Well, we've also had a number of people talk about aliens that look just like us. Lou mentions it in the book. He talks about Nordics and Greys. And he mentions it a second time. He comes back and he says, it's even been theorized that the Nordics created the Greys. Now his shit's all on record from somebody of Lou's stature and background and resume. Shadow Patriot Terry, you're a hero. Thank you. Shout out to Shadow Patriot Terry. Just gifted 5 night shift memberships. You guys, you're gonna make me emotional. This is unbelievable. Another problem with human speculation about aliens is that we always only base our thoughts about them only on models of things we have done to ourselves instead of treating them like genuine aliens. Shadow Patriot Terry, you are a megastar. Thanks for your energy. Um, threats come in many forms. It can be an infiltration. If there's, I know how crazy this sounds. Part of the reason this channel exists is so we can talk about shit that just sounds absolutely bonkers. But Robert Dean was, you can go look up his interviews on YouTube. He's said when he worked for NATO, the big fear there was that there are beings that look exactly like us. Robert Bigelow has repeated this numerous times. Robert Bigelow said this in an interview. Billionaire, aerospace, hotel magnate Robert Bigelow, the most important billionaire you almost don't hear about outside of the UFO world, who's funded research into this for 40 years now or more, who set up, who has a fucking gray alien painted on the side of his damn building, and who also has created a company that was a holding company for CIA to divest themselves of a UFO. Not CIA. Who was it? It was a contractor who was going to send a UFO over to him, and then CIA stopped it. That Robert Bigelow, that guy, says that they look just like us, and you couldn't tell the difference if you saw one. Your daily Ingo Swann. Ingo Swann said the same thing. He said they look just like us. In fact, he was standing next to one at the grocery store, and he had a couple of his intelligence IC community intelligence community guy handler, Axelrod, and 2 agents showed up, and they were like, "Do you know who the fuck that was? You can't be here with her. You got to get out of here. She's dangerous. You have no idea what you're dealing with." There's this woman in a grocery store in Los Angeles. Ingo Swann goes in to buy groceries. He's making dinner that night, and his spidey sense starts to go. And this is the Michael Jordan of remote viewing. Absolutely, who again worked with Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ. And he's like, there's something weird about this woman. What is going on with her? And it turns out later in the book, they talk about this. They're like, they look just like us. And you don't know who's who. We just know some of them are telepaths, and they're super powerful telepaths. So you have this lore, you have all this history, and there's all of these interesting side quests and bizarre characters and interesting people with weird credentials and resumes that do kind of hold up. I mean, Robert Bigelow is not a nobody. He definitely knows what he's talking about. Ingo Swann is not a nobody. He definitely knows what he's talking about. And then you have a guy like Lou Elizondo who comes out in his book and he's acknowledging remote viewing. Yeah, that's real. It's super real. And not only is it super real, it really works. And it works really, really well. So all that crazy shit that you've heard these remote viewers say, go give that a second look, because there's something there. That's really interesting. He talks about the Collins elite, this shadowy Christian fundamentalist cabal that exists sort of in a within the defense community. It's just made up of, it's like a secret society of super believers, and they approach him and tell him, we already know what these things are. You need to let this one go. These are demons. We don't deal with that. What is going on here? You're getting this, like, he's creating this description of a world. This sounds like a Steven Spielberg movie. It's crazy, right? Do you all agree how crazy this sounds? I think that's the thing, right? Like Night Shift, where the attitude here is like, I get that it sounds crazy, but I'm on board. Like, let's keep going. But it does sound insane. There's a shadowy cabal of super fundamentalist Christian nationalists, military people operating clandestinely within our defense community and intelligence community, and they're covertly making decisions about what happens with UAP funding and study. He goes on and talks about he kind of sketches out the situation as within the Pentagon, some people have a lot of information and other people are shut out and have absolutely no information at all. And he was starting to uncover these things, but then unlocks this whole corporate contractor side of things. And Dolan talks about that, and he's built a fantastic slide. I'm going to show you this. Let me just cue this up. The Legacy program. This is 20. Let's go to 2220, and we're going to listen to him explain about the Collins Elite, and then we'll just roll that into the Legacy program, and then I'll come back and we'll go into that. Here we go.
Wrote that in the book. So it's not really clear how powerful the Collins Elite was or is, but according to the book, they are indeed a presence within the military. Even a former supervisor of his was one of them. He's
back up a little
fundamentalist within the military. So he goes on. He really talks about how for almost the entire time that they were there, that the programs, ATIP and OSAP, were essentially under siege throughout their entire existence. As I said earlier, as he mentioned, they initially did enjoy some support from the DIA leadership, but over time, you see there's an increasingly number of detractors that emerge at very senior levels within the DIA. Program went from being initially favored to being what he called, I think, the Wicked Witch of the West, almost overnight. And again, I really wondered about the significance of going from the Bush presidency to the Obama years. Again, he doesn't deal with that. I would like to learn more about it. But he definitely gets into the fact that the higher-ups were actively trying to kill the program, filing away or ignoring reports that were destined for other people in power, a lot of internal opposition, a lack of resources to deal with what he felt was a serious national security threat. And then he talks about the two particularly powerful forces in the way of the program. He talks about the Collins elite. These are essentially religious, Christian religious fundamentalists within the military who had a lot of power to shape policy within the DoD. This was written about by Nick Redfern, a researcher, a number of years ago. Lou actually states in the book, he said, I heard about this. I heard legends. He said, I thought it was like the Illuminati, this mystical thing that I don't really believe in. This is him. He says, no, actually, they turned out to be entirely, this was real. And then the other force that they had to deal with was what we can call the legacy program. That would be the secret, very largely privatized crash retrieval program. Let's talk about the Collins elite first. He has a few interesting things to say about that. As I said, he had heard stories about this, and he's like, I don't really know that I believe it. He discovered that several of the group's members were former colleagues of him, and even a former supervisor of his was one of them. He said every action that they took was motivated by their religious beliefs. It's not really clear if this is a formal thing, if this is an informal group of people. But he actually talked about a conversation he had with the one senior official who seemed to represent the viewpoint. And he just said, look, these are demonic. There is no reason that you should be looking into these any further. He said, we already know what they are and where they come from. They are deceivers, demons, is what this person told Lou. And he wrote that in the book. So it's not really clear how powerful the Collins elite was or is, but according to the book, they are indeed a presence within the military, and that is definitely interesting. And then the other thing he talks about is a legacy program, which...
Real quick, let's bounce out of that and come back before we go to the legacy program. The Collins elite, there was a documentary. I don't think it's the same group at all, but it's a similar group. There's a Netflix documentary called The Family. If anybody's seen this, let me know what you think in the comments. Here it is. I'll just pull this up. The Family, and it's about a similar group, a shadowy group of Christian fundamentalists within Congress who push certain legislation, shuffle funding into pet projects that suit their beliefs, and kind of just game the system for their own good. Very House of Cards, Game of Thrones kind of a situation. And if you're interested in a group, in a mini series that really explores how a group like that functions, this is a great documentary to get into, for whatever it's worth. So now we're in a situation where Lou's book has acknowledged the reality of remote viewing. He's acknowledged the reality that UAPs have harmed and in some cases killed individuals who have come into contact with them. He has touched on the conversation about abductions. He's just starting to go there. He's talked about implants. These were the darkest fringe of the fringe corners of ufology for the longest time. And he's kind of just set the bar at this new level. And now he's added this new element of the Collins elite. The Collins elite, a shadowy group of Christian fundamentalists steering UAP research and funding in away from that into other things. Are they trying to shut it down and manage it so internally, or are they trying to ignore it completely? I think that's a really interesting thread. Somebody should look into that. I don't know what's scarier, the fact that we have no other tool in our toolkit besides the military and Christian fundamentalists to assess this situation and deal with it. That's scary enough. But are we really going to let like, I don't want to insult anybody's religious anything. I understand how important it is. I have my own things and I've got my own stuff too. But these fucking Christian people, I got to be honest with you guys. Like, sometimes these fundamentalists, like church people, you guys got to let it go. You got to let it go. You're not the only people. You're not the only. There are other people. There are other cultures. There's other shit going on. And what we need is some kind of a council of people from all walks of life, from all around the world, who can come together and be educated about this topic and start making educated decisions that benefit all mankind in some kind of way. But no, instead, what we get is like defense contractors and Christian fundamentalists. It's like these fucking guys. Like, it's always these two groups. And apparently now Bitcoin bros and Wall Street billionaires. So it's anyone's guess how we screw this up, but that's the last set of people. Those groups I do not want in charge of first contact or diplomacy or anything really. They shouldn't be in charge of any of this stuff. And don't come at me. I'm sorry. I'm like, I didn't mean to phrase it that way. I'm not trying to say all Christians are bad or anything like that. I'm not, it's not, that's not what I mean. It's just, I'm talking about a very specific group, a very loud, politically active people in the United States who just won't ever shut the fuck up about some of the stuff that bothers them. And it gets old, and the rest of us want to just move on and get on with our lives. All right. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to get myself into more trouble. All right, so he goes on to talk about the legacy program. Let's take a look at this. This is where it gets really interesting for me. Here we go.
I want to pull up my slide here for that. He actually, he lists, as you can see here, a number of the corporations that he has identified as part of it. These are the corporations, essentially, defense contractors, aerospace contractors that over the years, where technology and in some cases biological remains of non-humans have been retrieved from the crashes. The legacy program, as far as Lou could see from his time in ATIP, has been working for a long time. They are working, he says, at total cross purposes to ATIP or OSAP. They're very jealous of their prerogatives in accessing UFO tech and having UFO knowledge and science. Really wanting a monopoly of that is really how he's kind of portrays it. And he mentions the main corporations, Lockheed Martin, TRW, which got bought, I think, by McDonnell Douglas, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, Raytheon, BAE Systems, the Aerospace Corporation. He also mentions Monsanto, which later was purchased by Bayer, as probably being involved due to the biological studies. Monsanto is interesting, of course, because they are really the world leaders in genetically modifying foods, genetic research, highly sophisticated with them. And he paints them as being apparently part, let's just say, of this legacy program. So that I found very, very interesting. The existence of a program like this, obviously, this is something I've talked about for years. Lots of other people have talked about this for years. It would mean that you've got a very deep conspiracy. I think that's probably the best word we can use here within the United States government to keep the truth away from citizens. And that is exactly how Lou puts it. He adds, in addition to these corporations, he has a few things to say about the Air Force, which he believes has had historic control.
So in addition to all of that, he talks about private military contractors having their own in-house crash retrieval teams that are going out or at least were at some point going out and retrieving craft. So you have private aerospace contractors, you have the CIA, you have the Office of Global Access, you have all these different groups. Then we have our adversaries. You have Russia, China, whoever else is doing their own thing internally. It'd be weird if North Korea. What would North Korea do? You have to imagine North Korea's they probably give it to China. They probably have a deal. China comes in and just takes that stuff. But that would be really strange, right? There seems to be at the same time. This is where it kind of gets interesting to me. Like what that chart shows me, those corporations, that's a tremendous footprint. That's an enormous amount of people. One crash retrieval operation has got to have 150, 200 people involved. I mean, how many I'm not a military guy, but like how many people does it take to plan an operation where you have to have multiple giant aircraft, specialized response teams that are nuclear, biological, chemical trained experts that can go in. You have to have security people for the perimeter. You've got to have some kind of overwatch thing. You've got to have communications. All these people have to be talking. They've got to get the shit in. They've got to get it out. And all of this stuff is happening in a weird middle of nowhere place. So how many different people are trying to retrieve crashed craft, and how many individual bodies are involved in a process like that? And how big of a team does it take before you really secrecy completely breaks down. It's like, because the whole first part of the book is Chris Mellon saying that there was like, everybody just said there was no there for so many years. And it turns out it looks like there's tens of thousands of people working on this every day, all the time. It can't be both. And I find that really interesting. I'd like to know more about, well, I'm sure we'll find out, right? If this ever really blows up in Congress, we'll know. All right, so we're going to skip ahead to the threat narrative, and then let's see. I think that was at 50. And we also have a situation where huge elements of the federal government decision-making apparatus are completely cut out of the loop, and you have other elements that are totally in the loop of the military, and then apparently we have this other group of fundamentalists that are either not involved at all or think this is all magic and voodoo or whatever, or evil, and who knows what these people are doing. Then we have adversaries that are developing their own technology based off of this stuff. And then we have allies who are probably secretly developing their own stuff all at the same time. And then you have private industry that is maybe not defense related, but may also be doing their own thing. Here's a question. When we get some more capable AI tools, when we, let's say, cut to 10 years from now, just 10 years from now, and the AI is really, really good and fast and has access to all information and can do research in a simulation and generate new knowledge, create new materials. How does UAP research accelerate under those conditions? And at what point do we just, in the civilian world, make some breakthroughs that are just impossible to lock up anymore? Like, it just becomes common knowledge that you can make an anti-gravity device or some kind of like, there was a story this week of a high school kid who built a fusion reactor using AI. Have you guys seen this? Can anybody, if anybody knows what I'm talking about, Brett, if you know, if you know what I'm talking about, or Xander, if you can find this, there was a story that just came across the radar this week, and it was a kid who made a fusion reactor for his science fair project. We had no hardware experience, and he just used AI, Claude 3.5 plus some kind of add-on. Okay, so let's see.
Explicitly about the Wilson meeting. You know, of course, it started back in 1997 with Dr. Stephen Greer, with Dr. Edgar Mitchell, and Navy Commander Will Miller was involved, and a few other people. Where they briefed a number of, or met with a few people in Washington, including Admiral Thomas R. Wilson, arguing that there was essentially rogue operations that involved U.S. defense contractors that had possession of crash retrieval wreckage, and that the security of the projects was beyond top secret. And of course, Wilson did look into that, was denied access to the program, and then 5 years later was able to meet with Davis, who interviewed him for 70 minutes in a car in Las Vegas and wrote those very detailed notes out, which we now have. One thing Lou did is he called Eric Davis's credibility as, quote, unimpeachable. That's typical for what you hear about Eric Davis. Everyone says this about him. Extremely honest individual.
So regarding that, the decision loop is not just one loop, it's many loops. And it seems like, how can something be so classified and so top secret that no one in the military, up to and including an admiral or the president, can know about it? Like, who? There's like secret super weapons that only certain people in the military even know exist. Like, how can you, as the commander in chief, how can you call upon the options available to you if you don't even know what they are? How can you Like there's a lot of talk about that, right? Like how some presidents that didn't come from an intelligence background, like George Bush did, and Jimmy Carter didn't. So certain presidents will get briefed on these things. But regarding a lot of the technology that's been reverse engineered, and even Annie Jacobson talked about this with some just basic nuclear stuff. She's like, there's stuff that's so secret that they don't even tell the president. They don't tell half the people in the military. Don't even know about it. Well, when do you tell somebody that we have? When do you tell somebody? Like when do you tell the president that? Oh yeah, we've got all this. Remember an Independence Day where they're on the plane and they're like, Area 51, where you got the bodies, and they're like, yeah, Area 51. That was just a movie. And the guy in the back of the plane, the military guy, was like, well, it's not. All right.
Why not? UFOs are real. They are, well, not human, alien, and you have to remember that that word itself is a rhetorical device. Narrative.
Okay, so threat narrative. This is the part I want to show you. This is the most, I think, interesting part about this whole show is great, but this one is great, especially. He breaks down this idea of a threat narrative and how that term is used to sort of belittle people who talk about the threat potential, which I think is I think it's a better way of putting it. He just nails it, in my opinion. So here it is. Take a look.
People love to use that word narrative. I'll just say, anytime you hear the word narrative, you have to remember that that word itself is a rhetorical device. Anytime you hear the word narrative in a discussion, it's always meant to diminish an argument that you just happen to disagree with. This is the only time you ever hear narrative. There's a lot of other words that you could say. You could say position, you could say opinion, you could say argument. Those would all be a lot more neutral. But when you hear someone say narrative, you know that they're taking almost always an ideological position here. And I think that is absolutely true. When I hear people say, oh, he's bringing up the threat narrative, it essentially dismisses it as to something that's a mere unimportant, reflexive position that doesn't require or deserve any deep understanding or appreciation. I think that's a very dangerous position to take. I think it's a very misguided one. The first thing to say, though, here is that there is no question in my mind that Lou's a position on potential UAP threat. He comes by it honestly. This is his opinion. And like his attitude, he actually has a quote here. He says, look, at best, this is a very serious national security issue. And at worst, he says the possibility of an existential threat to humanity. Now, you don't have to agree with that. And, depending on the day of the week, I may or may not agree with that myself. But he makes a few points to this. He emphasizes that these objects are routinely observed, performing maneuvers far beyond any known human technological capabilities. If you're a military guy, you're going to care about this. Again, this is what we pay them for. You pay your military to identify potential threats. It's disingenuous, it seems to me, to expect a military person to do anything other than that. So that's concerning. Just the potential of another agency, whether it's from Earth or not from Earth, to have these capabilities to just run circles around our top aircraft, that would be worrisome, would it not? He also notes, as have many other researchers, including myself, that these UAP have been observed interfering with nuclear capabilities, violating sensitive military airspace. Yeah, no shit. We all know this. It's been going on for decades, and he is making that statement himself. He describes incidents where these UAP come dangerously close to military aircraft, as we mentioned with the Roosevelt encounters, sometimes splitting formations, which for him, that's a little problematic, would it not be? Yes. He points out, you don't have to go all the way down this geopolitical analysis, but this is his take. He points out that if another country, China, Russia, some other nation were to get this technology, that could be dangerous. Well, sure, it could be from that perspective. you want to know, like, how are we on top of controlling and managing this technology? All of these are legitimate concerns. Of course, he doesn't bring up the concern that what would the United States do with this technology, but we'll leave that aside for now. He does mention that several military servicemen and intelligence officers succumbed to injuries and even lost their lives due to biological effects of these encounters. And one thing he said that was really quite interesting, I was not familiar with this line of thinking, but he suggested that all of this activity, even for the last 70, 80 plus years, could be interpreted as what he calls initial preparation of the battlefield. And this is a known thing, IPB, an IPB operation. To him, that would be like the worst case scenario. In other words, they're here for like 80 years. They're testing our defenses. They're seeing, are we able to detect this? Can we stop this? Are we vulnerable to this technology and that? So all of that would be a kind of long-term testing of our capabilities. The reason I actually don't find that particularly persuasive is that our own capabilities have kind of leapfrogged over themselves over the last 80 years. But really what you see in human technological capability since, we'll just start with the 1940s, has been one revolution after another after another.
Excellent breakdown of this whole conversation around the threat narrative. And I think he tees up a really great point about technology. Maybe it's the other way around. Maybe it's that they're waiting for us to cross, again, in Star Trek, there's a threshold, right? Like you don't just, a civilization doesn't just reach out and contact any other civilization. They have to achieve the warp drive technology to be able to qualify for being included in the Federation. So when a race or a species of people becomes warp capable, then Starfleet sends out a ship and they have formal contact. And then they send out the Cerritos, and it's the second B team that goes in and does all the second contact. That's the whole premise of Lower Decks. They're the second people who go in after first contact. But maybe it's the other way around. Maybe it's not about an attack. Maybe they're waiting for us to get to a certain point. And it seems like this is all increasing. A lot of this activity is increasing, maybe on the threshold of the birth of artificial general intelligence or artificial superintelligence. Maybe that's the threshold. That's where they really get concerned, because that can run away from us. And there's no stopping it at that point. So if maybe that's the level of technology that we have to get to, and maybe there are other reasons, or maybe there's something else going on. But I just think that's not enough people are thinking about that, at least so far as I can tell. What do you guys think? Let's see what the chat's got to say. Animals as symbols and synchronicities and things that aren't been beyond meaningful. Yeah. Who writes a 27-minute long forward? Brett Higgins. The other aspect to the threat narrative is but another aspect of this that could represent a threat, or we should probably think about it as such, is the fact that you have what appear to be multiple little fiefdoms that are each in possession of some amount of recovered alien technology. And from what I understand, these corporations were told they were allowed to keep the technology indefinitely, like that belonged to them, so long as the advancements from that technology made it into military hardware first, and then they could be commercialized and put out into the world. That comes from Colonel Corso's book, The Day After Roswell, and it also is mentioned in Lou's book as well. That's part of the supposed history of this program. And that sets up a really weird legal situation, because if you have American taxpayers funding the Department of Defense, CIA, paying for recovery teams to go out, government employees to do this work, recover these craft, then they turn them over to a private corporation. And that technology just never comes out. Meanwhile, we desperately need it. What happened? Where that's like this black hole where all this stuff just goes and disappears, and we don't know what's going on with it. So would it be better, or rather, maybe the best way to say this is, what would be better? What's a better system? Would it be a council made up of experts chosen from a broad range of international groups and nationalities and backgrounds, assembled together, a collective of research institutions and universities brought together under one sort of banner and given real funding to set up like some kind of a central campus? Or would it be the UN? Would it be something like that? Would the UN in its current form make sense to handle diplomacy between ours and another civilization, whether or not that civilization originated on Earth and is located here or is coming here from elsewhere? What kind of modifications would be required? It seems to me that if they wanted to make contact with us in the safest possible way, then the best way to do it would be from a distance and over time, right? Like send a message and say, okay, this is our basic introductory message. Here's some basic information about us. Here's the situation that is happening. We'll be in touch. You have 2 weeks to respond. You send a message back, and then they send it. And over time, maybe over 5 or 10 years, a conversation would happen. I don't know. Could you have open contact with these beings? Could they just get out and walk around? That's the other question. I mean, certainly experiencers have described that thousands and thousands of times. Um, so it's not impossible to believe, but it just seems, I don't know. It rocks my world. Ryan Davis, have you heard the interview from the 90s by a Marine who walked up on an egg-shaped UFO crash in Brazil? It's on EOC. Yes. In fact, that's crazy that you mentioned that. You're talking about Lance Corporal John Wygant, one of my favorite cases, and I'm actually working on a video about him right now. I've got it open in my Adobe Premiere, and I was pulling clips from that interview. And yeah, that's a crazy case because, for one, he's another one of those people. I know the conversation's kind of split on Dan Burrish, but I'm of the mindset that you can look at someone's body language, and if you really um, pay attention, you can. We have a built-in bullshit detector. You can kind of tell if someone's bullshitting you after a certain point, right? Most people can, I think. And Wygant's one of those people. I watch his interview and I'm like, this happened to this guy because he's just as shocked as everyone. He's telling this story and he was like, yeah, I think he was like 23 or 22 years old. He was young guy. And he gets deployed and he's in Peru and he's working for this, I forget what unit it was that he just describes it. And then he gets sent out with a couple guys to investigate a crash. They get there, they find this big egg-shaped UFO crashed into the side of a mountain. And he says there's like vents on it, and there was like some kind of a glowing ooze all over the plants that were in that area. And it got on his uniform, got on his BDUs, it got on his skin. He talks about having a telepathic communication with something inside the ship. He says something spoke to me in my mind, in my head. You guys, if you've not seen John Wygant's story, you have to go watch it. I'm going to make a video on it, and I'm going to have the truncated version here. But if you really want to see it. By the way, this is a UFO pro tip. Silence. UFO pro tip. If you're going to search anything, if you want to really find a video, don't go on YouTube and search the video. Go on DuckDuckGo, search it there. And then, like, if you go on YouTube and type in Jonathan Wygant, it's crickets. Like, nothing comes up. But if you go on DuckDuckGo and type in that same name, all his stuff comes up. His interview is the very first thing that pops up. All his pictures are here, all his stuff, Reddit posts. It's all here. Let's see if I can do this. Here we go. Yeah, DuckDuckGo. Here you go. Jonathan Weygandt, former Marine, tells this story. He's just as shocked as everybody. He talks about what was really interesting about this is that he talks about the approaching the craft. He has a psychic communication, a telepathic communication with something inside the craft. He cannot see what it is, but he looks. There's a hatch that's open on the craft, and it's dark inside. He describes the surface of the craft as organic, almost like it was made in a shop or something. It looked organic. He said that it was super dark material. It was like this almost blacker than black material. And it looked like it was sort of pitted and not, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't like when you see someone describe a disc. It was like this, they describe a disc as polished aluminum or polished stainless steel. It's perfectly smooth. This is not like that. And he describes this craft. And then what he describes next is even more interesting because he describes the recovery team that comes in. And he says, these people were the Department of Energy. And they had security guys with them that were super high speed, all in black, no insignia, super badass, military contractor dudes who were just geared up. And they were like, you weren't supposed to see this. We will throw you out of a fucking helicopter. We'll drop you in the jungle. You're going to die out here. Like you can't, they basically took him for 2 days and they just scared the shit out of this guy. And you can tell like, he was traumatized by it. And he's describing all this. And he was like, the aircraft that they bring in, the recovery team to get this thing out of where it is in the jungle is so big. It's got to be hundreds of people. You have to watch it. So Jonathan Weygandt, go on DuckDuckGo, do your searches there. Don't go on YouTube. Don't waste your time. Don't go on Google. This is where you'll find the treasure you seek. Mm. I'm just reading the chat. I need some like music in the background, some little elevator music. Check Discord. Oh, well, let's check Discord. All right, let's see. I feel so old. When I look at Discord, I just feel so old. I'm just like, I don't know what I'm looking at. What am I doing here? Oh, there it is. AI helps students. Oh, it's on the Discord. I see what you did, Chris. Oh, okay. That's great. Visit site. Can I do this? Here we go. Math student built nuclear fusion reactor with AI help. And he achieved plasma, which most of us only dream of. Astonishing countless people online. Hudhaifa Nazurdin, I hope I'm getting that close to right. I apologize. A mathematics undergrad built a miniature fusion reactor in his bedroom with the help of Anthropic's Claude 3.5 Sonnet AI model, sharing the process along the way from understanding components to designing and assembling. In simple terms, a fusion device uses an electrostatic field to accelerate ions such as deuterium toward a central point where they collide and fuse. The setup needs a high vacuum to minimize collisions with background particles, high voltage to create the electrostatic field that accelerates the ions, and deuterium gas as the fusion fuel. Since he had no prior hardware experience, he familiarized himself with design and the use of McMaster car in the first week. In the second week, as parts began to arrive, he started building the main chamber and assembling the half-bridge rectifier. See, this kid would be in Starfleet. This is who goes to Starfleet. In Starfleet, this is like your third grade homework is probably build a fusion reactor. By the third week, Hudaifa was setting up the system in his bedroom and learning to connect the neon sign transformer without a multimeter. He used an Arduino to check circuit connections. Am I saying that right? Blah, 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 blah. Let's see. That's the electric electrostatic field, I guess. It says used a neon sign. What was this? Um, used an MKS 901P transducer to establish a vacuum and measurement system. I fed Claude all my data sheets, and it helped a ton with this. He found this project stage most challenging as he spent a week locating a vacuum leak and successfully reduced the pressure to 25 microns. In the fourth week, Hudaifa found a 12 kilovolt neon sign transformer that successfully produced plasma. While this experiment didn't achieve fusion, it demonstrated the potential of combining the internet with LLMs, showcasing how it can open doors to scientific exploration for enthusiasts without prior experience. That's what I'm talking about. Like, what happens when we get to this level of progress with ufology and you have citizen scientists collecting data, analyzing it in groups, cross-referencing it across different groups, and creating some real conclusions and outcomes with the help of AI. It's going to be really interesting. Fascinating. Now we're going to toxic P heart. Great. Now we're going to have people creating portals or black holes in their bedrooms. And where this bedroom was, there is now a giant crater. City officials are puzzled. Shadow Patriots, Harry, that's great. To Dolan's point earlier about adversaries reverse engineering some of this technology and our own military industrial complex, I just want to be clear. I'm not against the idea of our military having super powerful UAP technology. I think someone's going to have it. I'd rather it be us. I think it's important that we have the technological capability to defend ourselves. I think that's important. Whether or not we have to is a whole nother question. Better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So that's what my dad says. The real worry comes in when you have an adversary like China or North Korea or somebody that can utilize some aspect of this technology, maybe just like a really great cloaking device or some metamaterial that makes it possible to develop some kind of super weapon or this whole thing about Bayer and Monsanto being involved in biological study, that's really interesting. What about biological warfare agents that could be developed from alien technology? That's weird. So we have to have our own teams in house that understand all this stuff and know how to deal with it and are at least developing it so that we know what we're dealing with and we can handle it. I think that's important. But it seems to me that going forward, and I think I'll end on this note. We'll switch over and do a few questions, and then we'll go ahead and wrap. But we need something else. We need some other. It can't just be the military, and it can't just be private aerospace like that has contact with these things. That's not going to work. So you need a group of people who can speak for all of humanity and who do so in a way that doesn't take the profit motive into account. Like that's not a consideration. We're not interested in how this affects necessarily the Fortune 500 companies. This is more of a question of how does this affect humanity as a species going forward from this point on. I think that's what's necessary. But what form would that take? Who would be? How would it work? Neutron bombs will be high on our list as UAP anti-deterrence. Neutron. Yeah, we have to understand that. Unfortunately, the most advanced tech is with private companies, no countries. It's interesting, wasn't it? The Boeing Starliner that was a complete piece of shit. That stranded the two astronauts up there. Now they've got to get a SpaceX rocket to go up and rescue them. Yeah. What's going on over at Boeing? If you guys are sitting on alien technology, you really are slow to bringing that to market. Like your capsule sucks. Here we go. Let's do this. Boeing faces hard questions about Starliner and its future in space. See, we're gearing up for this entirely new space race. It's going to be all about who can save time, who can move cargo faster for less money, who's got the goods when it comes to getting to the asteroid belt, Mars, beyond. All this stuff is going to be commercialized. All this stuff is going to start to come out at some point. It's going to have to. But it's interesting that Boeing can't build a space capsule that works. So, all right. I've got to wrap it there. Thank you, everybody. It's been great to connect. If you haven't already, go over to Reddit, get involved on the Team Night Shift subreddit. And Brett is also helping us manage that as well. So say hi to Brett while you're there. And I will be popping in throughout the week. It was great to see you all. Please, if you're not already a subscriber, subscribe. If you want to support the channel, you can become a member. You can also go to the website, teamnightshift.com. I think I even have a graphic for it. Where is it? Where's my Team Night Shift graphic? Oh, it's not even working. OBS, you failed me. Go to teamnightshift.com. Check out our cool merchandise. Free shipping on all the shirts. UK shipping is now available. I think it should work for everybody. Give it a try. If it doesn't work for you, send me an email. We'll figure it out. If I have to, I can even push through an order manually on my end. So if it really comes down to it, we'll get you squared away. Don't worry about it. Just let me know. Discord's going to be up soon. Keep an eye out for that. It is functional. It's up and running. It's operational. It's just not open to the public yet. We're doing some internal testing and streamlining, and then we're going to do invite only for a little while until we get the kinks worked out. And then once that's done, we'll open it up to everyone else, and that's going to be a lot of fun. So keep your eyes out for that, and be nice to Brett, and be nice to Chris and Xander, because they're in charge of who gets in. We're gonna keep a line at the door. Special shout out to Xander Jones for the awesome theme music that we're gonna play on our way out, which actually I'll play right now. And are we going? Here we go. I'll talk over this so we can listen. Shout out to Xander for this awesome music. And we're going to be hearing more from Xander in the next week or two, because I think I'm going to bring him on and we're going to start talking about some different stuff. So looking forward to that. Stick with me. We're still working out the kinks. It's a process. I'm very proud of you. I'm very proud of this community. This has been the greatest fun I've had in a very long time, is working on this community and connecting with all of you. And to watch it come together and grow is awesome. It's awesome. So I'm really excited to see where we go from here. Thank you for being here today. I'll see you on the next one. I'll be back here Friday at 2 o'clock. And yeah, I got some cool interviews dropping this weekend. So keep your eyes peeled for those too. Thanks, everybody. Keep looking up.